Right, in our large property room, we will have a large conveyor system that would store the property that comes from the inmates. In this facility like this, where you've got 1,100 inmates minimum, 1,400 inmates, that's a lot of bags of stuff. And so, as we saw when we toured the Collin County facility, we would have a very similar facility to that, in that it's a conveyor system belt that moves things so that you can access it easily, and works well for managing all the inmate property. If any of you have been in your existing facility, you see how it's done now, and it's lined up along the underground tunnel that goes to the courthouse.
On the public, what was
on the public side, very inefficient way of doing things. They're doing what they can, with what they have. But yes, that's what that is.
The whole data backbone is in. Now, what is not would be telephone system, PCs, desks, shelves, things we would typically associate with office type of things are not part of what this hard cost
Right.
is, or what we call permanent fixture.
So if you have a fax machine in your jail administration office, or a computer in your jail administration office, that cost is not included in here. That's not permanent.
Thank you. I think this is probably more a question for the court, something we need to do down the road, but I'll go ahead and ask this question, and if you have an answer, or members of the court have an answer. Has a cost comparison, including hard cost and operational cost, been undertaken between in-house health services versus outsourcing those services? Please explain. I know your design concept gives the space for the infirmary and the treatment rooms, that sort of thing. Obviously, it's something we could outsource, or we could hire our own staff to handle that. Is that something you all looked at?
Not specifically. I will say that when you have an infirmary for a facility of this size, you can really reduce transfer officer costs, because you're not running people back and forth to a hospital all the time, or to another type of provider. So typically putting an infirmary in this kind of facility is a huge advantage operationally.
But maybe further, if part of the question is about whether you're going to hire your own doctors and nurses versus outsourcing that, no, we haven't looked at that. But I will tell you that the program could accommodate either type. These are typical kind of office space and exam space and infirmary space that would be given over to, whether it was you with your own system or if you did outsource. In fact, that would be true for the kitchen as well. If you were to run the kitchen yourself, or if you would decide to hire someone like Aramark to run the kitchen, or another brand, I'm not endorsing one, but the way we have a program, this would be the typical kind of layout, typical kind of space required for you to either run it yourself or to outsource it.
And incidentally, you do currently outsource the operation of your kitchen. So,
Number 12, please describe the project's design and into how it accommodates expansion of beds and infrastructure.
okay. If we go to the road, stop, right? Go one more. Here's one potential for future expansion. Currently, we're showing 480 dorm beds be built in this low-risk facility. This future expansion that you see there is for an additional 96 beds that would be added on to the dorm area. Now, we could handle this several ways. Right now, we're not building a shell here, but you could build a shell here and then just have to outfit it at a later date. Or you could build on top of this in the future and add that space and put additional dormitory beds there. Also, if you go back into the jail tower on the second floor, I believe. Here you go. You can see there we have the infirmary on one side of that purple corridor, and we have medium housing on the top side. Over to the left, we currently are not building this space out as bed space, but this would be another opportunity for 96 additional dormitory beds. It would be a little bit less if it were a different type of housing, but you could, I think, Larry, didn't we say we could get 2 units of
separation housing or maximum housing beds?
Okay, so there's a lot of opportunity there for adding additional beds in the original solution. And if you go to the site layout, there you go. Okay, where that fire station is currently located, I think would be the the next best place for a far future addition onto the existing jail where you could add beds. And as we briefly mentioned earlier, it's probably the first thing, is that you can build another core and shell floor onto the jail tower. And we actually have shown that on our floor plans, level 5. We'll get to it here. Here we are. Level 5 of the building could be easily built as a shell space, so you could come in and build it out in any way. But you could get 288 additional beds on this floor, 240 to 288, depending on how you did it and how you laid it out. So there's another potential for future additional bed space. This would probably be the first option, and if we have money available to build, this would be an easy option to build the shell space so that you can easily fill it in for future beds.
And Kurt, is that, my understanding, to do that would cost roughly $5 to $6 million, $6.5?
Yeah, our first estimate was $6 to $6.5 million to build that shell space, so you'd have that there for future.
And that's per floor. You could do additional floors.
Yes, you could. That is not currently included in the cost.
Right.
Okay.
Number 13 is, if the Carlton Hotel is to be demolished, is there a transition plan to relocate the sheriff's offices and other county services contained in the building? That's probably more a question for Commissioners Court. We have met in executive session. There is a plan in place that we're looking at. However, we're meeting in executive session so as not to jeopardize our position in real estate matters. There are several options, either the purchase of existing property with offices. There's the possibility of leasing space, and we're looking at those. We're discussing those items now, but we can't go into the details at this point. Certainly, everyone knows that if we do have to demolish the Carlton, and that's, I think, everyone's preference at this point, then we've got to have a plan in place to phase to relocate the sheriff's offices. And we can open this up for questions. That's the last of those questions that I received in advance. But as we were going through the presentation, I was thinking about the video visitation. I want to clarify, there would be booths for the inmates to visit with outside visitors on each floor. Is that correct?
Actually, let's go to a housing floor. You can see here, go to a blow-up, that'd be better. Back to the blow-up of the housing. That one should work. Here we are in the multi-purpose room. These on the end here are the video visitation booths. So each housing unit, this is a unit of 48 inmates, has four visitation booths that are included in the housing unit. What we've done with this design is incorporate as many of these kinds of things into the housing unit so that officers don't need to move inmates throughout the facility. Once they're there, unless they get sick, they don't need to leave this area until it's time for them to leave the facility. So, the video visitation is shown here in the multi-purpose room where it's controlled and should be a good solution.
Well, one other big advantage too is the processing of visitors themselves, because typically you have to put them through metal detector, even potentially search them. With video visitation, it is a much less security-intensive type of process. They come in, they sit at literally a screen on the wall with a phone or even a microphone, and they don't have to get into your secure perimeter. So there's two things. It's less staff-intensive. The other thing is that's one of the areas where the introduction of contraband into a jail is a real problem. So by keeping visitors on the outside with a video visit, the opportunity for introducing contraband is much less. And visitors find ways to do things with playing cards and all kinds of things, fish line, all types of things. So by not having them anywhere near the inmates, that whole contraband pass liability and issue really goes away.
I was going to ask also, you mentioned the idea of the off-site visitation for outside visitors. And we had talked about the possibility of using the, I think it was Chief Deputy Pinkerton who mentioned that, using the low-risk facility for